I'm Megan Skidmore, and welcome to the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm a woman, daughter, sister, spouse, mother, life coach, and person of faith on a mission to normalize asking questions and allowing doubts on a faith journey and all aspects of life. Join me as I bring this traditionally taboo topic out of the shadows of shame and into the light. I firmly believe we normalize through more talking and engaging in discussion. More talking peels back, exposes, and erases the layers of shame associated with asking questions and allowing doubts. When we are more authentic about our journey, we are more powerful because shame has no power in the face of authenticity. First Friday's free coaching, a confidential group to bring all the questions, vent frustrations, share fears, express doubts. Navigating a new and uncertain reality is hard enough. Let's remove the worry of judgment from others. In this group, I will help you help yourself so that you can be there for your child, family, loved ones, and for you too. Click the link in the show notes to sign up. You must complete the agreement. Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast. I'm Megan Skidmore, your host, and today I have my fellow coach friend, Sara Fisk, with me. And this has been kind of a long time in coming, Sara.
It has.
I am thrilled that you were able to take time out of your busy schedule and join me today. So welcome.
It is an honor to be here, truly.
Well, I feel the same. So, Sara and I, we first met either virtually first or at various conferences. And so I know that you are of the same faith background as myself, but I don't know all of your story. So it's like before I hit the record button, I told Sara, I'm really grateful to get your story recorded and out there for others to learn about and learn from and experience. So let's just dive right in. I want to give you the opportunity to share as much as we possibly can. So I'll just turn the floor over to you. Start off with just sharing about your origin story, I guess, your background, including your family, your growing up years, your education, and so on and so forth.
Thank you. First of all, it's rare that, we get to reflect on things like stories and what brought us here. I grew up I was born in Provo. My parents were students. I think it's a pretty common, Mormon beginning of a Mormon story. We moved to Central California when I was young, and that's where I was raised. And I always had to explain to people who were, when I eventually went to BYU, and when people found out that I was from California, there was always a little bit of excitement around that, until I told them that it was not the beach and not the mountains. It was the farms in Central California. And so I grew up on 4 acres of raisin grapes. Literally, we farmed grapes and put them out in the sun to dry and turn them into raisins. And so there was a lot of farm work, a lot of just hard manual labor. My dad is a general contractor. And so we joke that the way he raised us is probably against a bunch of child labor laws now, but pouring cement and hanging sheetrock and doing those kinds of things as a family was always just kind of a part of how I grew up. And it was also just very centered around our faith. You mentioned our shared background in the LDS or Mormon faith. And we didn't have any close family. And so the church was our family. And it was the center of a lot of our time spent. I grew up when Mutual was still on Wednesday nights. And I know it's still different in lots of parts of the world now, but the youth group was on Wednesday nights, and we'd go on Sunday and on Wednesday and on Saturday to do different projects. And so I never really had, because it was a very rural area,
Mhm.
I didn't have other LDS friends my age. Our congregation drew from little teeny farming towns across, a really large radius. And so I remember just really being lonely growing up. I wanted a friend who could understand my faith because it, I, our family took it seriously. Our family was very orthodox without being overly like strict about some things, like little rules that other families tended to really stick to. My family didn't, and I had a pretty active questioning phase and um, bringing things to the attention of my parents and youth group leaders that raised some eyebrows. I remember one incident in particular in the LDS faith. Once a month, there is what's called a fast and testimony meeting, and
Mhm.
fast just means everyone is fasting, and then testimony meeting just means that anyone who wants to can go up to the front of the congregation and share their feelings about their faith. And um,
Yeah,
it's kind of an open mic situation
it is.
in some
Yeah.
ways. And I remember going to the front and just really wanting to give words to a wrestle that I was feeling of like, I don't know if this is true. I don't know if this is right. I don't like, I like all of you. You're very
Mhm.
good people. And I remember the look on my mom's face, just kind of wishing I would sit down is what I thought, how I read her. Um, and there weren't many people who I could talk to about big
Mhm.
questions. Not my parents, not really anyone. And I didn't even really get the feeling that those thoughts on my behalf were even like really taken seriously. It was more like Sarah will just grow out of it, or it's a
Yeah.
phase.
How old were you again when you stood up on that fast
I
and
was
test?
15.
You
I
were
was
15.
15. Yeah. And
Yeah, that's young to be that open about where you were. That's
it
great.
it was, I remember feeling like I just had to say, like, lest you all think that I am at the same level of
Hmm.
believing and faith as you are, I just want to set it clear. I don't know. I don't know, but I'm coming and I am here. And so then I went to BYU, and BYU is the university owned by the LDS church. And
Yeah.
I underwent a really interesting change there. It was, first of all I had ever wanted to be surrounded by people of my same faith. And um, like I said, that loneliness component of growing up was really big. I had lots of challenges around friendships and wanting to have friendships, but not wanting to do the things that a lot of people in high school were doing, and wanting to be popular, but not doing the things that at the time would kind of result in that popularity, like drinking or sleeping around. And um, BYU just seemed like the answer to all of
Yeah.
that
Right.
teenage angst. and
Right.
and what I just had the most wonderful time finding friends and feeling like I had finally found my people. And in a way, that was, like I said, everything I had been looking for. And it also had an interesting side effect of like kind of radicalizing my Mormonness. And because now you're in a sea of people who are all acting the same way, upholding the same
Right.
standards. And it
Hmm.
just became really easy to fall into really black and white thinking. It was everywhere. And I ate it up. I wanted to be um, I wanted to be seen as a faithful, righteous, Latter-day Saint, righteous young woman. And so I my sisters call it my super Mormon years, where I just became I did all the Mormon things, right? Became a temple worker. I went on a mission. I was the president of everything that could have been offered, to me as a female in the congregation. And I taught at the missionary training center and really just kind of loved giving everything to the church. And I did. And I had no question that it was the right thing to do, the thing that I wanted to do, and the thing that I would do forever. And BYU was just a beautiful time. I'd served a mission for the church in Bolivia,
Mm-hmm.
and that was incredibly catalyzing for me to see such poverty, and for me to see the way that the church membership offered a lifeline to a lot of people in poverty. And that experience changed me. I mean, to this day, I'm the president of a nonprofit organization with three of my former mission friends.
Uh-huh.
We go back to Bolivia every year and run humanitarian projects or partner with other organizations doing humanitarian work. That it really deeply impacted me. And that it just seemed like it was the thing that brought me the most joy, the most good, the most it's hard for me to find the words just for how deeply committed to LDS way of life and teachings that I was.
You were, as they say, all in, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes that's how I've heard it described. If I can pause you just for a minute, because I know that's not all of your story. It really strikes me how young you were when you felt like you felt that need, but it was deeper than a need. It was like almost a duty to be open and honest about your faith as a teenager. That's so young. The clients that I work with, and I'm sure that you've worked with, allowing the questions and the doubts to come in brings up a lot of feelings, sometimes guilt, sometimes shame, sometimes worry, or anxiety about what others are going to think or say if you verbalize those doubts. But from a young age, like you, that's just so striking to me. Can you think back, like why that was so important to you to speak your truth at that young age, knowing that it was going to be different or guessing that it would be?
I just remember feeling like I didn't want to be misunderstood.
Okay.
Like here we all are on Sunday and we're all doing the same thing and believing the same thing and putting our hearts into the same thing. And it just felt important for me to say, guys, I'm just not 100% sure about this.
Mm.
It felt like an act of like being honest about things that I just couldn't, they didn't make sense to me yet. And I didn't really know how I was going to make them make sense. And I think the part that made my mom's face cringe a little is when I said, I know I'm supposed to get up here and tell you all that I know that this is true, that I know this, and this, but the truth is I just don't. And I like being here. I, you tell me that this is, the feeling of the Holy Ghost telling me that it's true. I just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And um, it didn't even, I don't even know, I don't remember planning that beforehand, but it felt like just an act of honesty.
Yeah.
And I didn't really have any other agenda other than it felt like I just need to be upfront with all of you
Yeah.
here.
That's so interesting. I mean, I remember growing up and being taught how, you gain your testimony and the bearing of it. Um, you can stand up and say the things that you do know and do understand or that you're learning. And I mean, good on you for being just so forthright about where you really were. And, that's something I believe you've carried with you into your journey up until now. And we're going to hear a little bit more about that. But I appreciate you sharing that little insight. My one my I consider myself a story collector. I'm collecting all these beautiful faith journeys. And it's just oh, I find myself saying the word testament. I don't know. It's demonstrative to me how they are all just so different and they're
Yeah.
supposed to be that way. And it's a beautiful thing. And yours is supposed to look differently. Although I related to a lot of what you were saying when you said your sisters called them your super Mormon years. That's funny. I did a lot of the same things that you did. Um, Mission, taught at the MTC and worked in the temple
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
all the callings. Interesting how sometimes that pendulum will swing. Um, but anyway, so you went to BYU and that had a significant left a significant impression on you on your journey. I love how you took note of, you kind of became a little bit more, I guess we could say orthodox because you were around a lot of that and it's easier to, oh, black and white thinking is what you said. How you noticed you just kind of got a little bit more steeped in that. Um, so then I know you're married and you have family, you have kids. Um, yeah, can you share a little bit more about how things went for you then? Post-
So, yeah, I met and married my husband. In Mormon land, we were quite old. I was 25 when we got married, and he was 26, and so I
Mhm.
had even started to experience some of the programming around like
Made.
yeah, that I was getting old, and so I had dated a lot at BYU and it just hadn't worked out, and I had planned to go do my student teaching. I was becoming a teacher in Washington D.C. and just kind of leave that particular Mormon bubble. I had felt like I'd outgrown it. It had done, what it was supposed to do for me. But then I met my husband, and we got married and stayed for about another year while he finished his degree. And then we moved to Houston. And I brought that orthodoxy and that zeal for doing all the Mormon things to my marriage as well, and the way we were going to raise our kids. And so because we'd gotten married, this just makes me laugh now, but because we had gotten married, quote unquote, older, I did feel like I needed to start having kids pretty quickly. And so I had our daughter Rachel when I was 27, and then 13 months later, twin boys.
Oh my goodness.
And so those three musketeers were the first of our eventual five children.
Okay.
And they were born in Houston. And that was a really interesting time for me because now I was a Mormon, but living in the Bible Belt. In fact, some of the some of the ways people talk about Texas is the bubble or the buckle of the Bible Belt. And there was a lot of anti-Mormon.
Mhm. Yeah, I served my mission in Houston, so I can.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
yes.
I
So you
did.
know exactly what I'm
Spanish speaking, but
talking
we still came
about.
across. Yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
and anyway, it it only it was like going from, the Mormon bubble where everybody was like me
Mhm.
to the place where nobody was like me. I did have, and make friends at church, but we ended up feeling not alone, but one of the things that the Mormon church teaches, the LDS church, is that the followers of Christ are peculiar.
Mhm.
And
Well, yeah.
yes, yeah. And that was a time, I think, when I kind of reveled in that peculiarity because I had to embrace it. I had to own it. I had to stand up for it because I couldn't and didn't want to hide it. And so I had a lot of conversations with neighbors and with coworkers. I was teaching in Houston Public School District, and
Mm.
and they would bring things up about the LDS religion that was kind of outside of their experience of what a religion, should do or practice. And I would jump in and say, that's right. This is why this happened. And so
You were
I
enthusiastic.
I was very, very enthusiastic about sharing with whoever would listen, and had a lot of experiences just continuing to try and share my
Yeah.
religious faith with other people, all the while really struggling, I think, in my marriage to really be loving because I was really concerned about doing it right, being
Okay.
doing Mormonism right, and holding us to a really high standard. A lot of the ways in which I criticized my husband were because of my perception of his shortcomings or
Mhm.
him not leading our family in the way that I thought he should. And I look back on that now with just a lot of generosity for myself because
Yeah.
I thought that's what I was supposed to be doing.
Oh,
I
I
thought
love.
that yeah, I thought that that's what I'm supposed to be doing.
Oh, I love that you use the word generosity. It would be so easy to look back with heavy judgment.
Yes, yeah. I it's hard to judge because I know where my heart was.
Yeah.
And by that time, in a lot of transparency, I was feeling a lot of anxiousness all the time
Okay.
about, am I doing it right? Is this enough? Is this what Jesus would want? Am I doing this correctly? And I didn't realize until much later kind of the hypervigilance load that I had developed in watching my own behavior at BYU.
Yeah.
Now I was kind of watching the behavior of my husband and then later my children, and kind of correcting and shepherding, and
Hmm.
in ways kind and unkind.
Yeah.
Because when my understanding was what matters is the obedience, right? The obedience to the commandments or the standards or the rules.
Yeah.
And however you get that is okay because what matters is the obedience.
So this is painting a really, great picture, really colorful, um, detailed picture of where you were at. And so my big question that I can feel coming up for me, Sara, is how in the world did you start to make room for, uh, I mean, this was adult Sara, 15-year-old
Yeah.
Sara. I mean, you did what you did, that incident, that passive testimony meeting, you had experienced a lot of things. and gone through, different evolutions of self. How did you start to make room for questions as they started to come up? Um, that can be a painful process when you are, um, as I said earlier, when a person is very all in, very orthodox, even to the point where you were kind of managing your family members. Again, looking at this through a lens of generosity. But yeah, I'd love to know more about that process, how you started to allow questions and make room for doubts.
Well, I don't think I made room for them. I think they just made their room in me
Okay, that's fair. That is
because
totally fair.
I really was in a very, very black and white phase. And um, the certainty of knowing how everything was going to work out and what was right and what was wrong just really I think as just a human it feels good, but also
Yeah, it
I
does.
think within the context of my daughter was born and 9/11 happened a couple of weeks later, and just the uncertainty of world events. And we lived in Houston during a couple really big hurricanes, and
Mhm.
um, so it really was a lifeline to just know.
Were you there for Katrina?
Katrina and Rita.
Oh, wow. Yeah, those were big.
Yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
so,
We were in
and we
Dallas by then. So,
okay, yeah, we evacuated for Rita, and that was its own
yeah.
just interesting experience for us, because when we evacuated, we found ourselves almost out of gas and stuck in front of a cell tower in one of the few places where you could get cell service. And I my husband had the ability on his phone at that time to look up phone numbers, and I looked up the name and number of the local LDS church. I
Mhm.
called the phone number um, in the phone book
Really?
at the time,
Yeah.
and someone picked up, and within an hour we had a place to go, and we were pulling into a stranger's home to spend the next couple days while the hurricane blew over. And that is something kind of uniquely Mormon,
Yeah, it
right?
is.
To be able to go anywhere in the world and find help is something that has happened to me several times. And so, but to get back to your question of how did questions, arise, when I was at BYU and I was engaged to my husband, this is 1999, his brother came out to us.
Okay.
It was after his mission, and he had come back to BYU and was living with a couple other people who were also gay. And at the time when he confided in us, we both had what I would call just a very typical reaction. We love you, but this is wrong. That
Yeah.
was when the church was still teaching that being gay was a choice.
Yeah. Mm.
And it it didn't have, well, I guess that's not entirely true. I was about to say it didn't have a huge effect on us because we didn't live near him, or I mean, and at the time, I don't even know that we had a really close relationship. He and my husband were creating a closer knit relationship, and have become much closer since then. But at the time, we both, we got married, we moved away. He finished up at BYU, and then he moved to New York. And so it was kind of something that we grappled with from afar,
Yeah.
but we had, and I have to remember this with a lot of generosity as well, just a very typical kind of conservative Christian religious reaction to that. And I remember telling my husband that I didn't want him alone with our kids.
Mm.
I remember telling my husband that we needed to be careful, right? And just all of these assumptions about things that he was going to do, and as we
Yeah.
um, as we got closer to either, seeing him at family events, there was a lot of kind of care and orchestrating that went into how we talk about him and
Mm,
the
a lot of
boyfriends that,
planning. Mhm.
yes, yeah, just a lot of orchestrating and trying to control the narrative, because I really believed that keeping it secret from my kids was the best thing, that if they knew about it, it might somehow have an effect on them. And um, like I said, I have to have a lot of generosity with
Yeah.
that version of me, because I was the product of what I had been taught to believe. And it all kind of culminated in we went out to New York to visit some other friends and had dinner with Craig, and that's my husband's brother.
Okay.
And I said to him, I said these words, Craig, we want to be close to you. We want to have a good relationship. But if you ever introduce homosexuality to my children, you will never see them again. And he looked at me with so much graciousness. And he just said, Sara, what? I would never do that. Like, I don't even know what I was talking about him doing, introducing
Mhm.
homosexuality. I have no idea what that even means now. But what I felt like is that I had his promise, right? That he was not going to do anything to make my kids be gay, and that we could kind of proceed on forming a closer relationship with him. And there was always something about it that, because in the back of my mind, the church was telling me that what he was doing was a choice. And yet every time we got together and talked, I had seen the the grief and the grieving process that he went through
Mhm.
about the church's teachings. And I don't even remember when the little doubt started creeping in. But if I could have put it into words, it was saying, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
I just don't know. This doesn't add up to me. This doesn't add up that he would just choose this and torpedo his whole life and his faith. He loved the church. He had served a mission for the church in Mexico and loved that experience. And but what I do clearly remember is by this time we were living in Mesa, Arizona, and I
Yeah.
was sitting in our front room and I was reading my scriptures. And again, just that rolling that thought over in my mind of like, I just don't know. That doesn't add up to me.
Mhm.
And just a kind of a testament to the black and whiteness of my thinking. That was like a decade later, right? It was a long time, and maybe not quite a decade, but
Quite a few
and
years anyway.
quite a few years. And then it was as if something just opened up, and I just thought, I think the church is wrong about this. I think we're wrong.
Mhm.
It doesn't make sense to me that this is a choice. And at the same time I had that realization, I was gripped with like fear, because it felt like a private heresy, right? Like something that I was allowing myself to consider believing that was very out of step with what my church was teaching, with what the leaders were telling me. And yet I couldn't not feel that. I couldn't not see that. And
Mhm.
I didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to begin to grapple with that. But I just started to talk with my husband about it. And we didn't know what to make of the way that the church was really coming down hard is too strong. It was just really making this pointed effort to, it felt like, ostracize a whole group of people that we knew Craig, we knew some of his friends, we knew some other people who he had become friends with at BYU who were also Mormon and gay. And it, it just never sat right. But what it did was it gave me a little bit of bravery to start, um, to just start noticing and to start speaking up.
Mhm.
I don't know how soon I started doing that. My recollection is probably not immediately because again, I was very,
Yeah.
very orthodox, very committed. But what we did start doing was going out to visit Craig, and he had a long-term partner at that point. Um, and we started cultivating a really active, connected relationship with him where we would visit him and spend time with him and his partners. And so all of my kids, it just began to be very normal that they had Uncle Craig and Uncle Michael. And
So
they're
has that
they're
been in more recent years?
no, that well, that was that was when we probably starting in about 2007 or 8,
Okay.
maybe.
Okay. So your kids were still young enough. And
They
yeah,
they were
that's,
still they were still very
and
young.
no
Yeah.
shame or no judgment on any of this. I'm coming from a place of complete curiosity because I'm sure there will be folks listening to this that maybe can relate to some of your story. And again, I just think it's so important to offer ourselves a whole lot of grace, just pour grace all over your situation and wherever you are at in your understanding, your willingness to entertain the idea that things might be different than maybe you had thought, even if it's been many, many years. I noticed one thing that you said that you just saw this struggle, this you were grappling from afar, but you said you saw him, meaning your brother-in-law, um, just struggling with his own, his own journey. And I truly believe it's that when we allow ourselves that proximity to others, when we really and truly put ourselves in their shoes, that's when it kind of becomes undeniable. You cannot look away from what's going on when you really try to put yourself in their shoes and how hard that would be to go through whatever you see them struggling with and whatever they might be telling you. I mean, you didn't specifically say that he said certain things to you, but you noticed his struggle. And I think that's what breaks our hearts wide open
Yeah.
is when we
Yeah.
allow that.
We had one conversation in particular where he was like openly crying with me about how much he missed going to church, but how painful it was to
Yes.
go. And trying to be helpful, I said, "Well, Craig, why don't you find another congregation that you could go to?" And he just said, I could never. I just this is where my home is. This is where my people are, and just how bereft he was in that moment of his home and his people was really, really heart-wrenching for me to
Yeah,
watch.
it's real. It's part of his heritage. It's in his blood.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so so very interesting. You didn't really allow the questions and doubts. They just kind of crowded their way right through, just kind of bulldozed their way right into your heart and your mind. And you were kind of left with, you had no choice but to face them and to grapple with them and to do something with them. And I noticed that you said you felt like it was this personal hearsay to actually kind of admit to yourself that, oh my gosh, I'm having these questions. I completely relate to that. It took me a long time to really lean into my own because I was sure I was going to be I laugh about it now, but I was going to be seen as this apostate person.
Yeah.
And um somebody who wasn't. It taught me a lot about how I had viewed myself up to that point and how much I really gripped onto that identity.
Yeah. I absolutely wanted to be seen as someone who was faithful, who was righteous, who
Uh,
was trying to do the good work right
right.
alongside
According to all
everybody
the
else.
definitions that
Yes.
had been given
Yes.
to me. Yeah. So that shame, that fear, that you said you were gripped with fear. I totally
It
get
was
it.
fear. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was 100% fear because I didn't know what to do with it. I couldn't talk to anyone about it.
Yeah.
It felt like just admitting it was something, like a referendum on how faithful I was, and yet
Yeah.
I just couldn't make it make sense any other way. And the beauty of that realization was that it kind of pointed me in the direction of kind of the plight and struggle of LGBTQ folks inside of the LDS religion. And we connected with a local
Mm-hmm.
um, organization that was doing a lot to try and build bridges between
Mm-hmm.
gay members of the church and their family members and try to build a place that was safe and brave.
Mm-hmm.
I love how you talk about that. And it really put us right in the middle of a lot of relationships with a lot of local families and members in a really, really beautiful way, which
That's
only
amazing.
which only served to increase my like,
Your
hey
cognitive
guys,
dissonance and
yeah,
your
I don't think we're doing I think we're wrong on this one. This
Mhm.
doesn't make sense to me.
So, can you remember when did you start to say those things out loud? I mean, it starts with our own selves first. We have to
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge it to our own selves first and foremost, and then maybe to those that we're closest to, right?
Yeah,
Often within our own faith communities, it's less so, especially in the beginning, I think. But can you remember you know, how did you finally do that? Like, how did you get to that place where you would start to say out loud, whether it's with your own family or your husband, or because, yeah, that takes it to a new level.
it does. And I
Uh-huh.
actually don't think I said anything for a
Okay.
while. We just started doing things differently. Like we would start to go out to visit Craig and his partner. Like we would go every year for Thanksgiving, and they
Okay.
lived in Atlanta. And I fielded a lot of questions. At the time, I was homeschooling my kids, and we had a very tight knit uh, group of all LDS families, and we all kind of did classes and activities together. And there were a lot of questions. What are you doing? Have you thought this through? Aren't you worried? It's going to normalize that for your kids. It's going to, and
Yeah.
I I was very, I don't want to misrepresent. I was very invested in what other people thought of me. Very.
Hmm.
And but I also felt like that was good and right to do. And the thing I guess that I'm proud of is that I did choose to go and, make some waves or rock the boat in that way because my parents were worried about it. There were a lot of
Okay.
people who started speaking up and having a lot of opinions about the amount of time that we were willing to spend with Craig and how that was going to normalize being gay
Right. All those
and
things associated with it.
all
Right.
those things. Right. And
Yeah.
so I don't know that I started saying a lot. I think we just started acting differently, spending time with not just him, but our other, gay local friends. And
Which is communicating in a different way. You may not have been
yeah,
verbalizing it, but you were definitely communicating it with your actions,
yeah,
which says
yeah,
a lot as well.
yeah,
So I want to fast forward a little bit if we
yeah,
can
of
to
course.
because you obviously you have created a very successful, thriving life coaching practice, and they kind of revolve around some of these themes.
Yeah.
And so quite a few of them actually. And so speaking up, owning your truth, we could say, is not something you struggle with. any longer. Would you say that's a fair statement?
No, you know what? I don't know that's
Okay.
entirely.
Oh,
I
okay. Then let's
There
say
are
you,
still.
you struggle with
I
it less. But I
Yeah,
thanks for the
yes,
honesty. You know what? That's fair because we're always becoming and evolving into our next best selves.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so that means we're coming up against something that's not currently comfortable for us.
Right. And I think like if that part of my life was getting really clear on what I believed and what I wanted to stand up for and whose side I was on, I think all of, even just this last 5 to 7 year period has been all about being honest about my feelings and how
Mhm.
I feel about things and how I think a lot of the ways that I got through challenges that I think are pretty normal for all of us is just by being really strong, armoring up, being really strong, being really dependable, getting it done myself, not relying on other people.
Mhm.
And what I have more trouble being honest about now is how much I need people and how tenderly I feel toward um, people that I love and my friends, and really letting myself need other people is something that is what I'm learning to be honest about now.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing your heart, Sarah, with all of us. I love, I've gotten to know so many wonderful life coaches and I love seeing the humanness there too. And I love seeing when you open up your heart like you just did. Tell us a little bit more about this program that you've created. You created the Ex Good Girl podcast,
Mm.
and you have a coaching program where you work with clients. Um, I don't know if you do one on one, but you
I
do.
do. Yep. I have
Okay, you
both
do.
one-on-one and group coaching. And it's all about just finding the places where people pleasing and perfectionism are making things painful for you, making things harder,
Mhm.
making it difficult to have the kind of vulnerability in relationships, the kind of open communication, the ways that women are taught, inside of
Mhm.
religion and out to be
Yeah.
nice and kind over anything else, to serve and to give to other people. And it's about finding a better balance between the service and the time we give to others and the time and the attention that we give ourselves.
So speak to how the concepts that you work with your clients in specifically, geared toward people pleasing, perfectionism. How does that help them give their own selves permission to look at things, to see things from the way that they're feeling inside, kind of like you started to, right?
Yeah.
Earlier on, when you started to, you'd have these little whispers come in and say, I just don't know. That just doesn't seem right to me regarding your brother-in-law.
We're so used to having a voice outside of us that tells
Mhm.
us you're doing it right. Yes, that's right. That's correct. You keep going. And if you're in a religious organization, maybe that's the pastor or the bishop or the whoever leads your
Yeah.
congregation, or maybe it's, God or the scriptures. And I was very adept at listening to that voice and doing what that voice wanted me to do.
Mhm.
And so the first step is to reconnect to that inner knowing and wisdom that
Yeah.
is there, that everyone has, that just gets covered up with all of that programming for outside
All the
validation.
external.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I truly believe that if a woman can reconnect to what her body tells her is good and right
Yeah.
and wise, it will not lead her wrong. It might not look like what she thought it was going to look like,
Hmm.
but it is the truest north. It takes some doing and some getting reacquainted with,
Yes.
but it's unfailingly true.
And I think it takes learning how to tolerate the discomfort that comes along with it because it's going to feel really awkward at first.
That's the biggest obstacle to it, right?
Yeah.
We are used to the discomfort of over being overcommitted. We're used to
Hmm.
the discomfort of, putting on a holiday for everybody else while we have no fun and can't wait for all
Yeah,
the kids to go back to school
for
and just let,
sure.
right?
For
That's a type of
sure.
discomfort that we know. and we know how to get through. It is very different to feel the terror of, I am going to trust myself on this. I'm not going to validate it with anyone else. I'm not going to poll my 5 closest friends about what they think I should do. I'm just going to trust myself. Not that everything's going to go perfectly, but that I will take very good care of myself, even if it doesn't work out, the way I want to, whether that's speaking up and saying something that I've never said before, or declining to participate in something that I've always done, or saying words that I've never said before.
And would you say, I don't know what your experience has been, but the more that you honor that voice, the more you listen. And when I say listen, you hear it, you acknowledge it, and then act on it. I think that's how that trust grows. And
Yes,
that there's this relationship there, the discomfort it dissolves just a little bit each time, just a little bit.
it does. It is, but it's just like exercising or like working a new muscle out, right? The first couple times, it's really hard. You can't lift a lot. You're sore. You
Right.
think about
That's a
not ever
really,
going back to the gym and doing that exercise again because it feels so painful. But then the more you do it, it really creates a virtuous cycle of strengthening that ability.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Definitely. Well, I know I've had you for quite a bit of time here. I just maybe a couple more questions. One, just how has your faith journey been different than what you might have expected? Think about younger Sara.
Oh, it's completely different. My own daughter came out when she was 15, and it's one of the great joys of my life that she just sat down at the kitchen table with me and said, Mom, I want to tell you about my crush. And I said, Ooh, what's his name? And she said, her name is, and then she just kind of bubbled on about her. And I knew in that moment that all of those Thanksgiving trips where we had just made it safe and easy to talk about were paying off. Now, inside, inside I was full on freaking out. Like I was,
which is
and
normal and natural.
yes, which is normal. But in my body, I felt like, like one of those, my grandma had one of these on her table, and it's what I saw in my mind, like one of those hourglasses with sand. And it's like it flipped over and the sand was beginning to go through. And what I understood that to mean was, your time now in this church is limited, because I knew by then I had been speaking up and out a lot. I had already been removed from a calling for a lesson that I gave about how Jesus probably loved gay people too.
Tell me, Sara, just now when you said you felt that in your body, that your time in this church is limited. How did that feel to you?
Terrifying. And for a long time, I was like, no, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. I actively fought against that, or tried to make it not true.
This is something that is so important to me. You described this community that you had growing up in California, and that outside of your own family, that's really who your family was at that time, right? And different experiences you've shared throughout your life. The family who took you in during Hurricane, it was Katrina or it was
Rita. Yeah.
Just all these experiences. I mean, and then I could hear in your voice just now, you were terrified. This isn't something that folks step into lightly. This is not something that they decide in a split second. There's so much heart work and soul work and thought work that goes into it. And it's just, I've said this before in previous chats that I've had. I don't want to see you or me or anybody else as us or them. It's just, we're all on our journeys. Can we please just honor that in one another and see each other's light, and honor that your insight is just that. It's special. It's yours. It's divine in origin, just like mine is. And just see one another. The light in me sees the light in you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I know we're very short on time. Can you share with me my one last question? I ask all my guests, what does it mean to you to live beyond the shadow of doubt?
It means that I have, like I said, that true compass inside of me. And that even when things don't work out the way I ideally would want them, what I can always fall back on is trusting that I'm doing my best and that I'm going to take really good care of myself no matter what happens.
I love that internal compass. So, so beautiful. Can you give me one word answers to these quick questions to get to know you? What is your favorite book?
Oh, I just read, I have so many books, but I just read The Horse, the Fox, the Boy
Oh, yes,
by
I know.
Charles Mack.
Charles Mack.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, I just
beautiful.
read
Are
that
you
to
an
my kids.
introvert or an extrovert?
I am an extroverted introvert.
Okay. Who's your favorite artist?
Like painting, musical
Whatever.
artist,
You
Taylor
choose.
Swift. I'm a
Okay,
huge
there
Taylor
you
Swift
go.
fan.
You a night owl or a morning lark?
Oh, I try to be both and it doesn't work.
Do you do still or carbonated water or diet soda?
Oh, Diet Coke, but I'm trying to quit.
Awesome. Do you have a celebrity crush?
Trevor Noah.
Oh,
I
fun.
think he's so intelligent. Yes.
And then the furthest place you've traveled?
Bolivia is pretty far,
Sure
probably.
is.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I will leave your email in the show notes if folks want to reach out to you.
I
Thank
appreciate that.
you,
Thank you.
Sara.
Bye-bye.
Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast is a proud member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, which is part of the Dialogue Journal found at dialoguejournal.com. Founder Eugene England was a Mormon writer, teacher, and scholar who wrote, "My faith encourages my curiosity and awe. It thrusts me out into relationship with all creation and encourages me to enter into dialogue. My hope is that this podcast is an extension of that vision." Hopeful Spaces is a Dallas Hope Charities component of Hopeful Discussions, sponsored by Mercedes-Benz Financial Services USA. It's a free monthly parent, ally, or caregiver support group facilitated by Megan Skidmore Coaching. Email chc@dallashopecharities.org for more info. Visit meganskidmorecoaching.com to find this podcast and additional free resources, including the link for a complimentary coaching session. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram for more or to send me a DM. Help the podcast grow. Please follow, review, and share with a friend.